Imagine being forced to make the unthinkable sacrifice, when a mother's only choice to save her child becomes the spark that transforms despair into hope. Can one act of desperate love rewrite a broken future? Nadia lived in a small, worn-down apartment in a busy part of the city. Every day she struggled to make ends meet while caring for her only son, Leo. Life had not been kind to Nadia. She worked odd jobs from early morning until late at night, but her earnings never seemed enough. Rent, food, and the cost of daily life kept growing, and Nadia found herself in a constant battle against poverty. Leo, with his bright eyes and quiet smile, was the one thing that made her heart beat with hope, even in the darkest times. One cold autumn morning, Nadia woke up to the sound of a knock on the door. A stern-faced man from the landlord's office arrived, with news that shattered her fragile world. She had only a few days before the rent would be raised beyond her means, and eviction was almost certain. Nadia's stomach twisted with fear as she thought of Leo, alone and uncertain in a city that did not forgive mistakes. The thought of losing their home left her desperate and alone. In that desperate moment, Nadia heard of an unusual way to save her son's future. Rumors had spread about a secret auction where a wealthy benefactor would pay a large sum for a woman in Nadia's situation. It was whispered that the auction, although degrading and full of cruelty, could offer a chance for survival. With no other option in sight, Nadia resolved to take a step she never imagined she would. The auction might cost her dignity, but it might also save Leo from a future of hunger and homelessness. On a chilly evening, Nadia found herself in a dim, cold room, surrounded by people who regarded her with pity and indifference. The room smelled of stale air and despair, and harsh lights shone on faces that seemed both curious and indifferent. Her heart pounded in her ears as the auction began. Each bid was called out loudly, as if each number sealed her fate. Nadia's eyes filled with tears as she listened to the numbers, each one a reminder that her life was now a commodity. Then, a deep, calm voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. $1 million, the voice declared. The bidder was Omar, a well-known billionaire with a reputation as vast as his fortune. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke in public, and yet here he was, his bid ringing out like a judge's gavel. In that moment, Nadia's fate was sealed. She was no longer a free woman, but a person whose life was purchased to secure Leo's future. After the auction, Nadia was taken to a luxurious mansion that stood in stark contrast to the narrow, grim streets she had known all her life. The mansion was full of sparkling marble floors, elegant furniture, and lush gardens. Yet, even in all its beauty, the place felt empty. Nadia felt like a stranger in a world of wealth and isolation. In the grand hall of the mansion, she was met by Farah, a kind but strict housekeeper, who now became Nadia's overseer. Farah's eyes were gentle, yet unyielding, and she made sure that Nadia followed the mansion's strict rules. Every corner of the vast estate was watched over, every move noted. Nadia felt the heavy weight of her new life, a life in which she was both cared for and controlled. Nadia soon learned of the contract that bound her to Omar. The deal was clear, but harsh. Nadia must bear Omar's child, and once the baby was born, the child would be his. The contract was written in plain words, yet each sentence cut through Nadia's soul. She thought of Leo, her son, whom she had hidden away from this painful deal, and the unborn child growing inside her. The thought of having to leave one of her children filled her with an unbearable sorrow. But she also knew that this sacrifice might be the only way to secure a future for Leo, a future free from hunger and eviction. Days turned into weeks as Nadia adjusted to life in the mansion. The luxury around her was undeniable, yet it could not erase the memories of her past. She missed the cramped apartment, the familiar streets, and even the hardships that had once given her a sense of purpose in protecting Leo. Here, in the opulent rooms, Nadia felt alone. Every night, she would lie awake in a small guest room, thinking of Leo and wondering if she had made the right choice. Omar, the man who had purchased her future, was rarely seen except for business meetings and formal gatherings. He was a reserved man, with an air of cold detachment. Rumors said that Omar had lost his parents when he was very young, and that the pain of that loss had driven him into a life of isolation. In his private moments, however, there were hints of a different side, a side that played the piano in the quiet of the evening, where soft notes filled the empty halls with a sense of longing and sorrow. One evening, as Nadia was walking in the mansion's garden, she heard the gentle strains of piano music drifting from a nearby pavilion. Curious, she followed the sound and found Omar sitting alone at a grand piano. His fingers moved carefully over the keys, and the music was soft and filled with hidden emotion. For a few moments, the boundaries between them seemed to blur. Nadia felt a connection, a shared sadness and hope, even though they had never spoken much before. Their eyes met briefly. In that silent moment, both felt a stirring of empathy and understanding. Nadia saw a glimpse of the man behind the mask, a man who, like her, had known loss and loneliness. Omar, for his part, looked at Nadia with a look that was both curious and compassionate, as if he sensed the weight of her sacrifice and the love that had driven her to make it. Days later, a secret that Nadia had kept hidden for so long was revealed. Farah, while cleaning one of the private study rooms, discovered a small drawing of a smiling boy tucked away in Nadia's belongings. The boy in the drawing was none other than Leo. When Omar learned that Nadia had a son, a storm of emotions swept over him. At first, he felt a surge of anger and betrayal. Why had Nadia kept this secret? Had she lied about who she was? But when he saw a glimpse of Leo's smiling face in a photograph, his heart softened. The innocence in the boy's eyes stirred something deep within him. Omar called Nadia to his private study. The room was filled with dark wood and warm lamplight, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile atmosphere of the auction room. With gentle words, he asked about Leo. Nadia's voice trembled as she explained that Leo was the light of her life, a reminder of all that she had fought to protect. She told him how every hardship she endured was for him, and how she had hidden him away out of fear that he would be hurt by this new, strange life. Omar listened in silence, his expression shifting from stern determination to a softer, more reflective look. In that moment, he made a decision. "You do not have to hide him anymore," he said quietly. "If Leo is a part of your life, then he is a part of mine as well." It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of a promise. Omar allowed Nadia to visit Leo, and soon he even invited the boy to come and live with them in the mansion. This decision marked a turning point in their relationship. The harsh, binding contract that had once defined their connection began to fade in the light of something more genuine. The contract, which had dictated Nadia's sacrifice, was slowly set aside. Omar realized that the rigid terms of the past could not contain the growing warmth in his heart. He tore up the old agreement, symbolizing a commitment to a new way of living, one built on care, understanding, and family. As the days passed, the mansion began to change. No longer did it feel like a cold palace of obligations. Instead, the halls filled with the sounds of shared laughter and quiet conversations. Nadia and Omar, who had once been strangers bound by an unfair deal, now found themselves opening up to each other. They talked about their pasts, their losses, and their hopes for the future. One clear evening, as the sky turned a soft shade of twilight, Omar invited Nadia to a small, private retreat he kept on the edge of the estate, a place where the desert met the horizon. The retreat was simple, with a few tents and a fire that crackled softly in the cool night air. It was here, under a sky full of stars, that Omar finally revealed the pain he had carried inside him for so many years. He spoke about the loss of his parents and the loneliness that followed him, even in a life of wealth. His voice was steady, yet laced with vulnerability. Nadia listened, her own heart aching with understanding. In that moment, the walls that had separated them crumbled, leaving behind two people who had both known great loss and longed for connection. Nadia, too, began to share her story. She told Omar about the long nights spent worrying over Leo's future, the difficult choices she had made, and the constant fear that she might not be strong enough. As she spoke, tears glistened in her eyes, but her voice was steady. She explained how every sacrifice she had made was out of love, a love that could not be measured by contracts or money. Over time, the bond between Nadia and Omar grew stronger. They found comfort in the small moments, a shared cup of tea in the morning, quiet walks in the garden, and soft music playing in the background as they talked about dreams of a better future. Nadia began to feel that perhaps there was a chance for a real family life, one that was built on trust and genuine care, rather than harsh deals and loneliness. But life, as it often does, presented one more test of their newfound connection. One day, Nadia felt a sharp pain in her belly. At first, she tried to ignore it, but soon the pain became unbearable. It was clear that she was going into labor. Fear and excitement mixed in her heart as she realized that the child she had been forced to bear was about to enter the world. Omar rushed to her side. In the sterile, bright room of the mansion's private hospital wing, Nadia lay on a bed, trembling with pain and uncertainty. Omar held her hand, his eyes full of gentle concern. "I am here," he whispered. "You are not alone." His voice, so full of care, soothed her even in the midst of her agony. The hours that followed were long and filled with a mix of pain and hope. Nurses worked diligently around them, and Omar remained at Nadia's side, whispering words of comfort and encouragement. Outside, the mansion's grand halls were silent, as if holding their breath in anticipation of the new life that would soon join their family. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cry of a newborn filled the room. Nadia's eyes closed in relief as she heard that tiny, powerful sound. Omar looked at her with tears in his eyes. In that moment, something shifted in him, a final release of the old, painful past. He reached for a pen and, with a determined gesture, tore up the contract that had once bound them. "This is the end of that old promise," he declared softly. "Our future will be built on love and care, not on a broken agreement." When Nadia recovered from the exhaustion of childbirth, she looked at Omar with new eyes. The man who had once been a cold businessman was now a partner, a father, and a friend. Together, they decided to build a family that was based on mutual respect and unconditional love. Nadia chose to name the newborn daughter Amara, a name that meant hope in a language from her childhood, a small reminder that even in the deepest darkness, hope could blossom. The days that followed were filled with small, joyful moments. Nadia, Omar, Leo, and baby Amara began to find a rhythm in their daily lives. In the mornings, Omar would help prepare breakfast, while Nadia laughed with Leo about his silly antics. In the afternoons, Nadia would take Amara for gentle strolls in the mansion's gardens, and sometimes Omar would join them, his quiet presence a comforting constant. Even Farah, who had once been a strict overseer, now offered warm smiles as she passed by, as if the mansion itself had become a place of healing. As the family grew closer, the mansion slowly transformed too. No longer was it a symbol of a harsh transaction or a cold, isolated wealth. Instead, it became a home, a place where laughter echoed in the hallways, where shared meals brought warmth to every room, and where even the quietest corners seemed to whisper stories of hope and renewal. The once lonely corridors were now filled with the sound of children playing, soft conversations, and gentle music that spoke of a new beginning. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, Omar suggested they hold a small celebration. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the birth of Amara," he said, his voice steady and full of emotion, "but the start of our new life together." Nadia felt her heart swell with gratitude and relief. In that simple moment, surrounded by the people who had come to mean everything to her, she knew that her sacrifices had not been in vain. They decorated the room with simple but beautiful items, a few colorful ribbons, hand-painted cups from Nadia's past, and fresh flowers from the garden. Leo, who had grown more confident and happy with each passing day, helped arrange the flowers with a child's innocent delight. Even Farah joined in, her usually reserved demeanor softened by the joy that now filled the mansion. As the celebration began, Nadia thought back to the day of the auction, a day filled with pain and despair. She could hardly believe how far she had come, from the desperate mother struggling to protect her son, to a woman who now shared her life with a man who truly cared, and a family that had grown from the smallest seeds of hope. The memory of that dark day was still with her, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it was a reminder of the strength she had found in the depths of her despair. Omar took Nadia's hand and led her to the center of the room. With all the warmth and tenderness he could muster, he spoke. "Nadia, I once thought that love was something that could be bought or measured by contracts. But you have shown me that love is a gift, one that grows with every smile, every shared tear, and every moment of understanding. I promise that from this day forward, I will never let any piece of our past dictate our future. We are a family now, built on trust and love." His words, spoken softly but with deep conviction, filled the room with a sense of peace and renewal. The simple celebration marked the beginning of many more happy days to come. As seasons changed, Nadia and Omar worked together to turn the mansion into a true home. They spent time planting a small vegetable garden, where Leo learned to care for the earth and watch tiny seeds grow into life. Omar, who had once hidden behind a facade of wealth and detachment, began to open up more, sharing stories of his childhood, of the love he had once known, and of the dreams he now nurtured for his family's future. In quiet moments, when the house was still and the stars shone brightly above, Nadia and Omar would sit together in the garden, their hands intertwined. They would talk about what the future might hold, a future not defined by old promises or painful pasts, but by the choices they made each day. The mansion, once a symbol of despair and a harsh transaction, had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of love and the strength found in new beginnings. Years passed, and the family continued to grow closer. Leo, who had once been a quiet, hidden secret, blossomed into a confident young boy who found joy in the simplest things. A game of catch in the yard, a laugh shared with his new siblings, and the loving guidance of both Nadia and Omar. Amara grew up surrounded by care and understanding, her name a constant reminder of the hope that had once seemed so distant. Omar's transformation was equally profound. No longer the detached billionaire who had once sealed a woman's fate in a cold auction, he became a man of deep compassion and genuine warmth. His past, full of sorrow and loss, was slowly replaced by the daily acts of kindness he shared with his new family. And Nadia, who had once been forced into a life that stole her freedom, now stood as a proud mother and partner, her eyes bright with the promise of a better tomorrow. One crisp winter evening, as the family gathered around a warm fireplace in the mansion's cozy living room, Omar surprised Nadia with a small velvet box. With trembling hands and a soft smile, he opened the box to reveal a simple ring, a symbol of the promise he had made on the day the contract was torn up. "Nadia," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "today I ask you to join me, not just as the mother of your child or the partner of a man who once made a difficult choice, but as the woman I love. I want us to build our future together, free from past obligations and filled with hope and kindness. Will you marry me?" Nadia's eyes filled with tears of joy as she nodded. "Yes, Omar," she whispered, "I will." The proposal was not marked by grand gestures or extravagant celebrations. Instead, it was a quiet, heartfelt moment that spoke of their journey, a journey from despair to hope, from separation to unity, and from sacrifice to a love that was truly free. In that simple act, they promised to support each other, to honor each other's pasts, and to embrace the future as a family. Their wedding was a gentle celebration of life, held in the mansion's sunlit garden. Friends and helpers from both the city and the estate gathered to witness the union of two people who had overcome so many hardships to find love. The ceremony was simple, with soft music, heartfelt vows, and the gentle rustling of the desert breeze. Nadia, wearing a modest white dress that symbolized her strength and renewal, walked down a petal-strewn path to meet Omar, who looked at her with eyes full of gratitude and admiration. Leo, now a bit older and filled with the innocence of youth, proudly carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, a gift he had picked from the garden he tended with such care. Even Farah, who had once been a stern overseer, stood among the guests, her eyes shining with pride at the transformation of the mansion and the lives within it. As the couple exchanged vows, they promised to cherish every moment, to honor the sacrifices that had brought them together, and to create a home where love and understanding reigned above all. Their promises were not just words spoken for the day, but a foundation upon which they would build their shared future. In the years that followed, the mansion became a living testament to what can happen when hearts are open and true love is allowed to grow. Nadia, Omar, Leo, and little Amara forged a bond that was deeper than any contract or deal. They learned that family is not defined by blood alone, but by the choices we make to care for one another, even when the road is uncertain and filled with hardship. Together, they faced the challenges of life, moments of joy and sorrow, triumphs and setbacks, always holding on to the belief that love could heal even the deepest wounds. Nadia often thought back to the day of the auction and the difficult decision she had made. It was a day marked by despair, yet it was also the day that fate had opened a door to a new beginning. In her heart, she knew that every sacrifice had been a step toward building a life where Leo could flourish, where Omar could rediscover his humanity, and where hope could shine brightly even in the darkest of nights. As the sun set on yet another day at the mansion, Nadia sat on the veranda, with Omar by her side. They watched as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, and the stars began to twinkle one by one. Nadia rested her head on Omar's shoulder and smiled softly. "I never imagined that our lives could change so much," she said quietly. "All the pain, all the sacrifice, it has brought us to this peaceful moment. We have built something beautiful, something real." Omar squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, Nadia," he replied. "We have learned that even in the midst of hardship, love finds a way. I promise that every day I will work to keep this light shining in our home. We are more than our pasts, and together we will make a future that is kind and true." In that simple moment, beneath the vast sky and among the whispering winds of the desert, the family felt the gentle assurance of a new dawn, a dawn where every day was a gift and every challenge was met with love. Their journey had been long and full of hardships, but it had also been one of growth, forgiveness, and the endless possibility of hope. For Nadia, Omar, Leo, and Amara, the mansion was no longer a symbol of a painful transaction or a relic of broken promises. It was a home built on shared dreams, on honest conversations under starlit skies, and on the belief that true family is formed when hearts choose to care for one another unconditionally. And so, as the night deepened and the first stars danced above the desert, Nadia closed her eyes with gratitude in her heart. She knew that while the past had been filled with sorrow and sacrifice, the future now held the promise of laughter, love, and a new beginning, a new dawn that would shine brightly on all of them.